Millionaire CEO sees poor girl crying, begging for food at his wife's grave. When he sees her face, Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The morning sun cast long shadows across Greenfield Memorial Cemetery as Wesley Reynolds stood before the elegant marble headstone. 5 years had passed since Elizabeth's death, but the pain remained fresh, a wound that refused to heal completely. "I miss you, Liz," he whispered, placing a bouquet of white lilies, her favorite, at the base of the gravestone. Wesley straightened his tailored suit jacket, a habit from years of board meetings and press conferences. At 45, he was at the pinnacle of his career as CEO of Horizon Technologies, a company valued at billions. His salt and pepper hair and the fine lines around his eyes were the only indicators of the stress he carried. The cemetery was deserted on this Tuesday morning, just how Wesley preferred it. He could drop his corporate mask here alone with his memories. But today, something was different. A small figure knelt at a grave just 20 feet away, in the same row as Elizabeth's. Wesley wouldn't have noticed except the child was speaking aloud, her voice carrying in the morning stillness. Curiosity pulled him forward, step by tentative step. As he approached, he could make out a little girl, perhaps 5 or 6 years old, placing wilted wildflowers on the grave. "Mommy, I'm hungry again today," she was saying, her voice trembling. "Ethan didn't eat yesterday. Can you send some food, please? I tried to find work like you showed me, but they said I'm too little." Wesley stopped, frozen by the raw desperation in the child's voice. She wore a faded blue dress, her dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her small shoulders shook with quiet sobs. With a start, Wesley realized she was kneeling at Elizabeth's grave. "Hello there," he said gently, keeping his distance so as not to frighten her. The little girl whirled around, eyes wide with alarm. She scrambled to her feet, ready to run. "I'm sorry," Wesley said quickly. "I didn't mean to scare you. That's my wife's grave you're visiting." The girl relaxed slightly but remained wary. "Your wife?" "Yes." "Elizabeth Reynolds." He gestured to the headstone. "She was my wife." The girl looked confused, glancing between Wesley and the grave. "But this is my mommy's special place." Wesley felt a strange chill. "What's your name?" "Harper," she said, lifting her chin with a dignity that seemed beyond her years. "Harper, that's a beautiful name. And you said this is your mother's special place?" She nodded solemnly. "Mommy sleeps here now. The lady at the shelter helped me find it." Wesley stepped closer, and that's when he saw her face clearly for the first time. The world seemed to tilt beneath him. Those eyes, Elizabeth's eyes, that determined set of the jaw, the same distinctive arch of eyebrows. Looking at Harper was like stepping back in time, seeing the childhood photos of Elizabeth that she'd kept in an old album. "How old are you, Harper?" Wesley asked, his mouth suddenly dry. "6, she answered, taking a half step back, sensing his intensity. 6 years. Elizabeth had been gone for 5. They'd separated briefly 7 years ago, a painful 3 months apart before reconciling. During that time, had Elizabeth been pregnant? Had she given birth without ever telling him? "And your mother's name?" he managed to ask. Before Harper could answer, her stomach growled loudly. She wrapped her arms around herself, embarrassed. Wesley's heart clenched. "You're hungry. Let me help you. I can get you something to eat." Harper's eyes narrowed with suspicion, even as they darted longingly to his hand, which had moved toward his wallet. "Ethan is hungrier," she said firmly. "He's littler than me." "Ethan? My brother. He's just 3. He's hiding." She pointed toward a cluster of trees at the edge of the cemetery. Wesley felt like he'd been struck by lightning. 2 children? Had Elizabeth hidden an entire family from him? "Harper," he said, kneeling to her level despite his expensive suit. "I'd like to help both you and Ethan. Not just with food for today, but really help you. Would you let me do that? Harper studied him with an intensity that was unsettling in one so young, as if she had learned early to read the true intentions behind adult words. Why? She asked simply. Wesley wasn't prepared for how that single word would pierce him. Why indeed? Because these might be Elizabeth's secret children? Because they were hungry and alone? Or because for 5 years he'd wandered through his life like a ghost and, suddenly confronted with this small, brave girl who looked so achingly like the woman he'd loved, he felt alive again? Because, he said finally, I think your mother would want me to. Something in his tone must have convinced her. Harper nodded once. Wait here, she said with the authority of someone much older. I'll get Ethan. As Wesley watched her hurry toward the trees, he realized his hands were shaking. If these were Elizabeth's children she'd never told him about, it would upend everything he thought he knew about their marriage. Yet seeing Harper's face, so eerily similar to Elizabeth's childhood photos, he couldn't deny the possibility. Harper emerged from the trees holding the hand of a tiny boy with the same dark hair, who clutched a threadbare stuffed rabbit. Ethan's face was pale, his eyes too large in his thin face. Wesley's corporate empire, his wealth, his power, none of it had prepared him for this moment. As the children approached, he made a silent promise to Elizabeth, wherever she was. He would protect these children, discover the truth, and maybe in doing so, find the part of himself that died with her 5 years ago. Wesley stared at the ceiling of his bedroom, sleep evading him despite the luxurious comfort of his California king bed. The digital clock on his nightstand glowed 2:47 a.m., its red numbers accusing him of yet another sleepless night. But tonight was different. Tonight, the faces of 2 children haunted him. After finding Harper and Ethan at the cemetery, he'd taken them to a nearby diner. The way they devoured their food, Ethan's small hands trembling as he gripped his spoon, Harper carefully wrapping half her sandwich in a napkin, for later, had broken something inside him. He'd arranged for them to stay temporarily at the Westside Children's Center, a reputable shelter he donated to annually. The director had assured him they'd be safe while he sorted things out. But what exactly was he sorting out? Wesley rose from bed and walked to the window of his penthouse, gazing at the city lights below. The mansion in the suburbs, the one he'd shared with Elizabeth, remained empty. He couldn't bear to live there after her death, though he couldn't bring himself to sell it either. Were they yours, Liz? He whispered to the darkness. His mind drifted back to their separation 7 years ago. It had lasted only 3 months, a painful time after he'd prioritized closing a major acquisition over their planned anniversary trip. Elizabeth had moved out, saying she needed space to reevaluate what she wanted from life. When they reconciled, she seemed changed. More distant in some ways, yet also more determined to make their marriage work. Had she been hiding a pregnancy? It seemed impossible. Elizabeth wasn't the type to keep such secrets. Yet Harper's resemblance to her was undeniable. Wesley moved to his home office and unlocked the bottom drawer of his desk. Inside was a worn photo album he rarely looked at anymore. He flipped through until he found what he was searching for. Elizabeth at age 6, standing beside a lake, her dark hair and pigtails, gap-toothed smile beaming at the camera. The resemblance to Harper was uncanny. Wesley closed the album, a decision crystallizing in his mind. Tomorrow he would return to the Children's Center. He would get to the bottom of this mystery, because whether these children were Elizabeth's or not, they needed help. And Wesley Reynolds, who had everything money could buy, but nothing that truly mattered, suddenly found himself caring more deeply than he had in 5 long years. As dawn broke over the city skyline, Wesley finally drifted to sleep, his dreams filled with Elizabeth's laugh and a little girl with her eyes. By 8 a.m., Wesley was already showered and dressed in casual clothes, jeans and a simple button-down that would draw less attention than his usual bespoke suits. His driver, Thomas, seemed surprised by both the early hour and the destination. The Westside Children's Center, sir? Yes, Thomas. And we might make several stops today. I'll need you to stay available. Wesley had barely slept, but adrenaline kept him sharp. As As they pulled up to the children's center, a modest building with a colorful playground, his confidence wavered. What was he doing here? What would he say? Inside, the director, Ms. Pearson, greeted him with a concerned expression. "Mr. Reynolds, I was about to call you. The children. They're gone." Gone? Wesley felt his heart drop. What do you mean? They left during the night. Harper apparently climbed out a window and helped her brother out. They've done this before, according to their file. They rarely stay at any facility for long. Wesley ran a hand through his hair. They have a file? So they're in the system? Yes, but it's incomplete. Their mother died 3 months ago, Catherine Brooks. Father unknown, no other relatives listed. Catherine Brooks? Not Elizabeth. Wesley felt momentary relief, followed by confusion. If their mother wasn't Elizabeth, why did Harper look so much like her, and why were they at her grave? Do you have any idea where they might go? Ms. Pearson hesitated. Harper mentioned something about their spot near Oakwood Park. Many homeless families camp there. Wesley thanked her and returned to his car, directing Thomas to Oakwood Park, a part of the city Wesley had rarely visited, despite living here for 20 years. The park was on the edge of a neighborhood that had seen better days. Boarded up, storefronts, run-down apartment buildings, and people whose hardened expressions spoke of daily struggles. For hours, Wesley searched, showing a photo he'd discreetly taken of the children at the diner. He spoke with street vendors, store owners, and people huddled in the park. "Yeah, I've seen them," said an elderly man feeding pigeons. "Little girl's fierce about protecting her brother. They sometimes get food from the back of Marino's restaurant when they throw out the day-old bread." Wesley followed each lead, growing, increasingly disturbed by the world he was discovering, a world of poverty and survival that existed just miles from his luxury penthouse. How had he never noticed? By late afternoon, exhausted and discouraged, Wesley sat on a park bench, watching children play while parents chatted nearby. Families with homes, with safety, with certainty, everything Harper and Ethan lacked. As the sun began to set, he made one last stop at a corner store near the park. "Those kids?" The owner nodded at the photo. "The girl came in this morning asking if she could sweep up for some milk for her brother. They might be staying in that abandoned building across the street. Second floor has some squatters." Wesley looked where she pointed, his resolve hardening. If Harper and Ethan were there, he would find them, and this time, he wouldn't let them disappear again. The abandoned building loomed like a specter in the fading light. Wesley hesitated at the entrance, its broken windows and graffiti-covered walls a stark contrast to the sanitized environments he typically occupied. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside. The stairwell reeked of urine and rotting garbage. Wesley pulled his jacket tighter, stepping carefully over debris. "Second floor," the shopkeeper had said. At the landing, he paused, hearing hushed voices from behind a partially open door. "Just a little bit, Ethan. That's all we have until tomorrow." It was Harper's voice. Wesley approached slowly, knocking gently on the doorframe. "Harper? Ethan?" "It's Wesley from the cemetery." Silence fell. Then, shuffling sounds. The door creaked open just enough for Harper's eye to peer through. "What do you want?" Her voice was guarded, but Wesley could hear the exhaustion beneath it. "I want to help. You left the shelter. They would separate us, send Ethan to a different home. That's what always happens." Wesley's heart ached at the matter-of-fact way she described their greatest fear. "May I come in, just to talk?" After a long pause, Harper opened the door. The room held only a pile of flattened cardboard boxes that served as their bed, a backpack, and some food wrappers. In the corner, Ethan sat huddled under a thin blanket, his face flushed. "He's sick," Wesley said, alarmed by the boy's appearance. Harper moved protectively to her brother's side. "He'll be okay. He just needs rest." Wesley knelt beside them, feeling Ethan's forehead. It was burning hot. "He needs a doctor, Harper. We don't have money for doctors." "I do." Wesley looked directly into Harper's eyes, so familiar, yet he now knew they couldn't be Elizabeth's. Please let me help him. You can stay with him the whole time. Harper studied Wesley's face, weighing his words against experiences that had taught her not to trust easily. Why are you doing this? It was the same question from the cemetery, but now Wesley had a clearer answer. Because it's the right thing to do. And because... He hesitated. Because you remind me of someone who was very important to me. Something in his sincerity must have reached her because Harper nodded slowly. Okay, but just for Ethan. Wesley called his personal physician immediately, then carried Ethan to the car while Harper gathered their meager belongings. Where are we going? Harper asked as Thomas drove smoothly through the city streets. To my home. The doctor will meet us there. As streetlights illuminated the inside of the luxury vehicle, Wesley observed the children. Ethan had fallen into a fitful sleep, his head on Harper's lap. Harper sat rigidly, one hand protectively on her brother, the other clutching their backpack. When they pulled up to Wesley's building, Harper's eyes widened at the gleaming high-rise. You live here? She whispered. For now, Wesley said, realizing how foreign his world must seem to them. The doorman's surprise was evident, though he quickly masked it as Wesley carried Ethan inside, Harper following closely like a vigilant shadow. In the elevator, Harper watched the numbers climb with fascination that momentarily overcame her wariness. As the doors opened directly into Wesley's penthouse, he suddenly saw his pristine, soulless home through new eyes, beautiful but sterile, unlived in despite his 5 years there. And for the first time he found himself hoping that these two children might stay long enough to change that. Dr. Morris arrived within 20 minutes, medical bag in hand. He raised an eyebrow at the scene in Wesley's penthouse, the powerful CEO hovering anxiously while a small girl watched his every move with suspicious eyes, but maintained his professional demeanor. This is Ethan, Wesley explained. He has a fever and I'm concerned about his breathing. The doctor knelt beside the couch where Wesley had placed the boy. Hello there, young man. I'm Dr. Morris. May I take a look at you? Ethan, now half awake, looked to Harper for guidance. It's okay, she told him, though her body remained tense. The doctor wants to help you feel better. Dr. Morris examined Ethan thoroughly while Harper refused to move from his side. Wesley paced behind them, feeling strangely helpless despite being one of the most powerful men in the city. Pneumonia, Dr. Morris concluded, packing his stethoscope away. Early stages, fortunately. He'll need antibiotics, rest, and proper nutrition. He wrote out prescriptions, giving Wesley a significant look, and he needs a stable environment. No more sleeping in, wherever they've been staying. After the doctor left, Wesley's housekeeper, Martha, appeared from the kitchen where she'd been discreetly observing. The guest room is ready, Mr. Reynolds. I've put fresh towels in the bathroom and found some of my grandson's old pajamas that might fit the little one. Thank you, Martha, Wesley said gratefully. Harper eyed the housekeeper warily. We can stay together, right? Of course, Martha answered before Wesley could. There are 2 beds in the blue room, perfect for siblings. While Martha gently coaxed Ethan into a warm bath, Wesley received a call from Robert, his personal assistant. Sir, the board is asking about tomorrow's quarterly review. They're expecting you to lead the presentation. Wesley had completely forgotten. I'll need to reschedule. Pause. Sir, the investors are flying in specifically for this. Postponing would send a concerning message about our Q3 performance. Handle it, Robert. Family emergency. Family. Robert's confusion was evident. Sir, is everything all right? I'll explain. Later, Wesley said, ending the call as Harper emerged from the hallway. Your house is really big, she said, her eyes taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows, the expensive art, the gleaming surfaces. Too big for just one person, Wesley admitted. Harper studied him. Why do you live alone? The direct question caught Wesley off guard. My wife died 5 years ago. Like my mom, Harper said quietly. Wesley saw an opening. Harper, why were you at my wife's grave yesterday? She looked down, suddenly interested in her shoelaces. It felt nice there. peaceful, and the name on the stone. It looked like my mom's necklace. Your mom's necklace? Harper reached under her shirt and pulled out a tarnished silver locket. It has writing inside. Mom said it was from someone special. Wesley's breath caught. Dear Elizabeth Reynolds, may I see that? Harper hesitantly handed it over. Wesley opened the delicate clasp with trembling fingers. Inside was the inscription he'd had engraved himself 15 years ago. To E, forever yours. W. Elizabeth's locket, the one she'd reported lost shortly before their separation. Before Wesley could process this revelation, Martha appeared with Ethan, now clean and dressed in pajamas, his damp hair curling against his forehead. Dinner is ready, Martha announced. Nothing heavy for our patient, just chicken soup and some bread. As they moved toward the dining room, Wesley glanced at his phone. 3 missed calls from board members, 2 from investors. For the first time in his career, Wesley Reynolds let business wait while he sat down to dinner with 2 children, who were quickly becoming far more important than any corporate deal. By morning, Wesley had made a crucial decision. He called Robert from his home office while Harper and Ethan ate breakfast under Martha's watchful eye. I need you to clear my schedule for the next week and find me the best private investigator in the city, discreet, thorough. Sir, with all due respect, what's going on? The board is in an uproar. Tell them I'm taking my first personal leave in 15 years. And Robert, start looking into resources for children who've lost their parents. Legal options, support services, everything. After hanging up, Wesley joined the children. Ethan looked better already, some color returning to his cheeks. Harper was methodically cutting his pancakes into precise squares. You always take care of him, Wesley observed. Harper shrugged. Mom worked a lot. I had to help. What did your mom do for work? She was a waitress. Sometimes she cleaned houses too. Harper's fork paused. She was really tired a lot. Wesley nodded, choosing his words carefully. Harper, do you have any photos of your mom? She shook her head. They got lost when we had to leave our apartment. Did she ever mention having a sister? Harper's eyes narrowed with suspicion. Why are you asking about my mom? Before Wesley could answer, the doorbell rang. Martha returned moments later with a tall woman in a crisp suit. Mr. Reynolds? I'm Diana Mercer, private investigator. Your assistant said it was urgent. Wesley excused himself, leading Diana to his office. He closed the door and handed her the locket. I need to know everything about a woman named Catherine Brooks, recently deceased. She had a daughter named Harper, age 6, and a son named Ethan, age 3. Diana took notes. And your interest in this case? Wesley hesitated. I believe Catherine may have been connected to my late wife, Elizabeth Reynolds. The children were visiting Elizabeth's grave, and the daughter had this. He indicated the locket, which belonged to my wife. Diana examined the locket. Any other connections? The daughter bears an uncanny resemblance to my wife's childhood photos. Diana raised an eyebrow but maintained her professional demeanor. I'll start immediately. How much access do I have to your wife's personal information? Complete access. There's a storage unit downtown with all her belongings. I couldn't. He paused. Things I couldn't bring myself to sort through after she died. After Diana left, Wesley found Harper standing in the hallway, her expression unreadable. Who was that lady? Are you sending us away? Wesley knelt to her level. No, Harper. I promise I'm not sending you anywhere. Then why was she asking about us? I heard you. Wesley sighed. I'm trying to understand something important about your mom and about my wife. Why? How could he explain his suspicions to a 6-year-old that her mother might have been Elizabeth's secret sister? That somehow his wife had concealed an entire family from him? Because I think they might have known each other, he said simply. Harper's face remained skeptical, but Ethan's call from the living room distracted her. Wesley watched her hurry to her brother, marveling at her protective instincts. Later, while the children napped, Wesley unlocked a safe hidden behind a painting in his office. Inside was a velvet box containing Elizabeth's jewelry, items too painful to look at but too precious to discard. Among them was a photo he'd forgotten, Elizabeth on their honeymoon wearing the locket, the same locket now somehow passed to Catherine's daughter. The mystery deepened and Wesley felt both dread and anticipation at what Diana might uncover. "Mr. Reynolds, we can't proceed with the Shanghai merger without your direct approval." Wesley pinched the bridge of his nose as Lawrence Chen, his VP of Global Operations, continued detailing potential disasters if the deal wasn't finalized immediately. "Send the paperwork to my home office. I'll review it tonight." "Sir, the Chinese partner specifically requested a video conference. Your absence is raising questions about our commitment." Before Wesley could respond, a crash echoed through the penthouse, followed by Ethan's wail. He ended the call abruptly and rushed to the living room. Martha was already there, helping Ethan up from where he'd fallen while attempting to climb the bookshelf. Harper stood nearby, fists clenched with worry. "He's okay," Martha assured everyone. "Just startled." Wesley knelt to check Ethan himself, relief washing over him when he found only a small bump on the boy's forehead. The child's tears subsided quickly when Wesley suggested ice cream, and soon both children were contentedly eating chocolate sundaes while Martha cleaned up the fallen books. His phone buzzed incessantly, board members, partners, lawyers, all demanding his attention. Wesley silenced it, a gesture that would have been unthinkable a week ago. That evening, after tucking the children in, Wesley received a call from Diana Mercer. "I've found something interesting, Mr. Reynolds. Catherine Brooks's birth certificate lists her as Catherine Elizabeth Brooks, born 6 minutes after her twin sister Elizabeth Catherine Brooks." Wesley sat heavily on his office chair. Twins. Elizabeth had a twin. "Yes, and there's more. I accessed your wife's personal storage. Unit as authorized. Hidden in a locked box was a birth certificate for Elizabeth listing the same parents. There were also childhood photos of 2 identical girls." "Why would she hide this from me?" Wesley murmured, more to himself than Diana. "I'm still gathering information on their relationship. Preliminary findings suggest they became estranged in their late teens. I found college records showing Elizabeth attended East Coast schools while Catherine remained local. From what I can tell, they had no contact for at least the last decade." Wesley thought of the locket, a gift he'd given Elizabeth early in their relationship. How had it ended up with Catherine? "There's another matter," Diana continued. "I found records of a restraining order filed by Elizabeth against a man named Benjamin Lewis 7 years ago, during your separation." "Benjamin Lewis? I've never heard that name." "He appears to be Ethan and Harper's father. He abandoned the family shortly after Ethan's birth, but has recently been making inquiries about the children's whereabouts." Wesley's protective instincts flared. "Is he a threat?" "Unclear. His record shows domestic disturbance calls but no convictions. He's employed as a construction foreman downtown." After ending the call, Wesley stood at the window watching the city lights blur through unshed tears. Elizabeth had hidden an entire life from him. A twin sister, a restraining order, secrets he never suspected during their years together. He walked quietly to the guest room where Harper and Ethan slept. In the dim nightlight, Harper's profile was even more strikingly like Elizabeth's childhood photos. The same photos he now knew included Catherine as well. These children were Elizabeth's niece and nephew. The realization hit him with certainty now. Not her secret children, but family nonetheless. Family she had never acknowledged to him. Wesley's phone vibrated again. Robert, likely with more corporate fires to extinguish. For the first time in his career, Wesley powered it off completely. Tomorrow's business challenges could wait. Tonight, he needed to reconcile the wife he thought he knew with the woman who had kept half her life hidden from him. 3 weeks had passed since Harper and Ethan came into Wesley's life, and a tentative routine had formed. Mornings began with breakfast together, followed by educational activities Martha arranged while Wesley worked from his home office. Afternoons often included outings to the park or children's museum, carefully planned to avoid overwhelming the still wary children. Today, Wesley watched from the kitchen doorway as Harper meticulously buttered toast for her brother. The changes in both children were remarkable. Ethan had fully recovered from his illness, his cheeks now plump and his energy boundless. Harper remained vigilant, but occasional smiles broke through her serious demeanor. "I thought we might try something different today," Wesley said, entering the kitchen. Harper glanced up. "What kind of different?" "I have a house in the suburbs, a big yard, lots of space to run around." "Would you like to see it?" Ethan clapped enthusiastically, but Harper's expression turned guarded. "We're coming back here, right?" The question revealed her persistent fear of displacement, despite Wesley's constant reassurances. "Of course," he said gently. "It's just a day trip." The drive to the mansion Wesley had shared with Elizabeth was quiet. He hadn't visited in nearly 5 years, though a caretaker maintained the property. As they pulled into the long driveway, memories flooded back. Elizabeth gardening on weekend mornings, dinner parties on the terrace, quiet evenings reading by the fireplace. "This is your house too?" Ethan asked in awe as they approached the colonial-style mansion. "It was my home with Elizabeth. My wife," Wesley explained, unlocking the front door. The house smelled faintly of furniture polish and disuse. Harper explored cautiously, running her fingers along bookshelves and examining photographs. "Is this her?" she asked, stopping before a portrait of Elizabeth in the hallway. "Yes," Wesley said, his voice softening. "That's Elizabeth." Harper studied the photo intently. "She looks like the pictures of Mom that got lost." Wesley nodded. "They were twins. Identical twins. That's why you look so much like Elizabeth's childhood photos." Harper's eyes widened. "Mom had a twin? She never told me." "I didn't know either, until recently. They weren't close, it seems," while Ethan raced through the garden with boundless energy. Harper remained pensive, examining every photo of Elizabeth she could find. In the kitchen, Wesley prepared lunch while Harper sat at the counter, swinging her legs thoughtfully. "Why didn't they talk to each other?" she finally asked. Wesley measured his words carefully. "Sometimes, even people who love each other have disagreements they can't resolve." "Like Mom and Dad?" Wesley paused. "Did your parents argue often?" Harper nodded solemnly. "Dad got really angry sometimes. Mom said he had a sickness that made him mean. Then one day, he just didn't come home anymore." The casual way she described such trauma tightened Wesley's chest. According to Diana's investigation, Benjamin Lewis had a history of alcohol abuse along with the domestic disturbance calls. "Harper, did your father ever hurt you or Ethan?" She shook her head. "Just Mom. He was nice to us except when he was drinking the bad-smelling stuff." After lunch, Wesley showed them Elizabeth's art studio, untouched since her death. Sunlight streamed through skylights, illuminating canvases and art supplies. Ethan immediately grabbed brushes, eager to experiment. Harper approached an unfinished painting on an easel, a landscape of mountains at sunset. "Mom painted too," she said quietly. "Not big ones like these. Little ones she sold at the market sometimes." As the children explored the studio, Wesley noticed Harper gently touching a silver frame on the desk. Inside was a faded photograph. 2 identical little girls in matching dresses, arms around each other, laughing. Elizabeth and Catherine. Together, happy before whatever drove them apart. In that moment, watching Harper study the twins' photo, Wesley felt a strange sense of purpose crystallizing within him. These children were the only remaining connection to both sisters, to the woman he'd loved and the woman he'd never known existed. They belonged here, in this house, filled with memories and untold stories. Somehow, he would make it their home. "Have a surprise for you two," Wesley announced over breakfast 1 month after the children had first come into his life. He had moved them to the suburban mansion, which felt more appropriate for children than his sterile penthouse. The house, that had stood empty for 5 years, was slowly coming back to life. "What kind of surprise?" Harper asked, her customary caution now tinged with curiosity. She was wearing a new purple dress that Martha had helped her pick out, her hair neatly braided. "Is it a puppy?" Ethan bounced in his seat, spilling milk on the table. Unlike his sister, he had embraced their new circumstances with unbridled enthusiasm. Wesley laughed, handing Ethan a napkin. "Not a puppy. At least not today. I thought we might take a little trip." "Where to?" Harper pressed, always needing details and reassurance. "I have a cabin by a lake, about 2 hours from here. It's peaceful, surrounded by trees. There's a beach where you can swim, trails to explore, even a small rowboat." Ethan clapped his hands. "Can we go fishing? I saw people fishing on TV." "Absolutely," Wesley confirmed. "I used to fish there all the time." Harper tilted her head. "Did you go there with Elizabeth?" Wesley nodded, touched by her perception. "Yes, it was one of our favorite places. We would spend weekends there, sometimes longer in the summer." "Did she like swimming?" Harper asked, her interest in Elizabeth growing daily. "She loved it. She would swim every morning at sunrise, saying it was when the lake was most magical." Harper considered this information carefully, as she did all details about her aunt. Mom was afraid of water. She never learned to swim. These small revelations about Catherine had become precious to Wesley, helping him piece together the woman who had been Elizabeth's estranged twin. "We'll leave after lunch," Wesley said. "Martha has already packed your clothes." The drive to the lake house was filled with Ethan's continuous stream of questions and observations. Harper, as usual, was quieter, watching the scenery change from suburbs to rural countryside with thoughtful eyes. Wesley found himself pointing out landmarks, sharing stories about places he and Elizabeth had visited. He realized it was the first time he'd spoken about her so freely since her death, without the crushing weight of grief closing his throat. The cabin came into view as they rounded a bend, a substantial structure of wood and stone with a wide deck overlooking the lake. Late afternoon sunlight danced on the water's surface and a family of ducks paddled near the shore. "It's beautiful," Harper whispered, her mask of indifference slipping. Martha had arranged for the caretaker to stock the refrigerator and prepare the bedrooms. As Wesley showed the children around, he was struck by how different the place felt with their presence. What had been a painful repository of memories was transforming before his eyes into something new. Ethan raced down to the water's edge, Harper following closely to ensure he didn't go in. Wesley watched them from the deck, struck by how natural they looked against the backdrop that had once been his and Elizabeth's private retreat. After dinner, they sat on the deck as twilight descended. Ethan, exhausted from exploration, dozed against Wesley's side while Harper gazed at the emerging stars. "Elizabeth's things are in my room," she said suddenly. Wesley looked at her in surprise. "What do you mean?" "There's a hairbrush on the dresser, and perfume. They must be hers." Wesley had forgotten those details. The cabin had remained largely as it was when Elizabeth was alive. "Does it bother you?" he asked gently. "We can put them away." Harper shook her head. "I like it. It's like getting to know her." They sat in comfortable silence until Harper spoke again, her voice small in the darkness. "Do you think she would have liked us?" "Elizabeth?" The question caught Wesley off guard, a lump forming in his throat. "She would have adored you both," he said with certainty. "Elizabeth always wanted children." It was a painful truth. Their inability to conceive had been a source of deep sorrow in their marriage. "Why didn't she and my mom talk to each other?" Harper persisted. Wesley sighed. "I wish I knew. Elizabeth never told me she had a sister, let alone a twin. I only learned about Catherine after meeting you." "That's sad," Harper concluded simply. "Sisters should stay together, like me and Ethan." Her words held wisdom beyond her years, and Wesley felt a renewed determination to understand what had driven the twins apart. As darkness enveloped the lake, fireflies began to blink among the trees. Ethan stirred and pointed sleepily. "Stars came down," he murmured in wonder. Harper smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile that transformed her face. "Those are fireflies, silly, like tiny flashlights with wings." Wesley carried Ethan to bed while Harper followed, her steps lighter than he'd ever seen them. Later, checking on them both, he found Harper asleep with her hand stretched toward her brother's bed, maintaining connection even in slumber. In that moment, Wesley knew with bone-deep certainty that he would do whatever necessary to keep these children together, to give them the security and love they deserved. It wasn't just about honoring Elizabeth's memory anymore, or solving the mystery of her estrangement from Catherine. It was about Harper and Ethan themselves, who had claimed a place in his heart that he never knew existed. The lake shimmered under the morning sun as Wesley prepared fishing gear on the dock. He had risen early, mind too full of thoughts to sleep. The weekend at the cabin had stretched into 5 days, none of them willing to return to the city just yet. "Is it hard to fish?" Harper asked, appearing beside him with silent footsteps that still sometimes startled him. She wore the life jacket he'd insisted upon for both children when near the water. "Not hard, but it takes patience," Wesley answered, showing her how to bait a hook. "I'm good at waiting," she said with the seriousness that often made her seem older than 6. "I've noticed that," Wesley smiled. "Ethan, not so much." As if summoned by his name, the boy came bounding down the path from the cabin, Martha following, with a picnic basket. "Fishing time," Ethan shouted, scaring away any fish that might have been nearby. Wesley helped them into the small rowboat, demonstrating how to hold the rods and cast the lines. Ethan's attention wandered quickly, but Harper, focused with intense concentration, determined to master this new skill. "My dad took me fishing once," she said after a long silence. Before Ethan was born. Wesley kept his tone casual, though his interest piqued. Harper rarely mentioned her father. "Was that a good day?" She nodded slowly. "He wasn't drinking then. He showed me how to be very quiet so we wouldn't scare the fish." "Did you catch anything?" "A little silver fish. Dad said it was too small to keep, so we let it go." A hint of a smile touched her lips at the memory. Ethan tugged excitedly on his line, though it was just a clump of weeds. Wesley patiently helped him recast, reflecting on how these simple moments, fishing with children on a sunlit lake, now seemed more significant than the multi-million-dollar deals he'd once prioritized. They returned to shore with one modest base, caught by Harper, who beamed with quiet pride. Wesley showed them how to clean the fish, then together they cooked it over a campfire for lunch. "This tastes different than fish sticks," Ethan observed, carefully picking out tiny bones. "Because it's real fish, not processed," Harper explained, with the authority of newfound knowledge. After lunch, Wesley suggested exploring one of the gentler hiking trails that wound through the woods surrounding the cabin. Ethan raced ahead, stopping to examine interesting rocks and bugs, while Harper walked beside Wesley, occasionally slipping her small hand into his when the path grew steeper. The gesture, so casual yet profound in its trust, squeezed Wesley's heart each time. They reached a clearing with a breathtaking view of the lake and surrounding mountains. Wesley spread a blanket, and they sat watching eagles soar above the water. "Elizabeth loved this spot," Wesley said, memories washing over him without the usual pain. She would bring her sketchbook and spend hours drawing. "Mom liked drawing too," Harper said. "She made birthday cards for us with funny pictures." "The twins had similar talents, it seems," Wesley observed. Harper pulled her knees to her chest, contemplative. "If they were twins, why didn't they look the same when they grew up?" Wesley looked at her in surprise. "What do you mean?" "The pictures of Elizabeth at your house. She looks different than Mom." Wesley hadn't considered this. "Different how?" "Elizabeth looks shinier, like those ladies in magazines. Mom always looked tired." The innocent observation struck Wesley deeply. Elizabeth had enjoyed the privileges of wealth, designer clothes, regular salon appointments, spa days, while her twin apparently struggled as a single mother working multiple jobs. "Life was probably harder for your mom," Wesley said gently. "She was raising you and Ethan alone, working very hard." Harper nodded solemnly. "She was always working. Sometimes she would fall asleep while reading me stories." Wesley fought back emotion. Had Elizabeth known about her sister's circumstances? Had she chosen to ignore Catherine's struggles? Harper, he asked carefully, did your mother ever mention Elizabeth, even without saying her name? Harper thought for a moment, then reached into her pocket and pulled out the silver locket, now cleaned and repaired by Wesley's jeweler. She said the person who gave her this was gone, but that they were once the most important person in her life. Wesley's mind raced. The locket had been Elizabeth's, yet Catherine had possessed it and spoken of its giver with such significance. The mystery deepened. That evening, after the children were asleep, Wesley sat on the deck with a glass of bourbon, staring at the moon's reflection on the lake. His phone rang. Diana Mercer. Mr. Reynolds, I've found something significant in Catherine Brooks's apartment. The landlord finally granted access. Wesley sat straighter. What is it? Letters. Dozens of them, written to Elizabeth but never sent, dating back years. And photographs the sisters together as teenagers at what appears to be your wedding and later. My wedding. Wesley almost dropped his glass. Catherine was at our wedding? Based on the photos, yes. There's also a hospital bracelet from 7 years ago, Cedar Springs Medical Center. Dates correspond to your separation from Elizabeth. The pieces were slowly connecting, forming a picture Wesley wasn't sure he was ready to see. There's one more thing, Diana added. Benjamin Lewis, the children's father, has filed an official inquiry with Child Protective Services. He's looking for his kids. Wesley's grip tightened on the phone. These peaceful days at the lake had been a respite, but reality was closing in. Soon he would need to fight for these children who had become so precious to him, and face the complicated truth about the twin sisters who had loved and lost each other. Gray clouds hung low over the city as Wesley's car approached the downtown office of Patricia Wells, family law attorney. Harper stared silently out the window, her normally serious expression even more somber today. Ethan, oblivious to the purpose of their trip, happily played with a toy truck on the seat beside her. The week at the lake had ended abruptly after Diana's call. Wesley had immediately mobilized his legal team, determined to protect the children from both the system and their father's sudden interest. Are we in trouble? Harper asked quietly as the car stopped outside an imposing glass building. Wesley turned to face her. Not at all. Why would you think that? People in suits ask lots of questions when kids are in trouble, she said, her eyes revealing past experiences with authority figures. This is different, Wesley explained gently. Ms. Wells is going to help us make sure you and Ethan can stay with me. Harper studied his face with that uncanny perception. Forever? The question hung in the air, loaded with hope and fear. Wesley had been carefully avoiding definitive promises, aware of the legal hurdles ahead. But looking into those earnest eyes, he couldn't equivocate. If that's what you want, then yes, I'm going to try to make it forever. Ethan looked up from his truck. Like adoption? Kelly at my old daycare got adopted. She said it means you get a forever family. Harper shot her brother a warning glance as if he'd spoken too boldly, revealed too much of their shared hope. Something like that. Wesley nodded, his throat tight with emotion. Patricia Wells's office projected calm efficiency, with muted colors and comfortable seating. The attorney herself was a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who spoke directly to the children, earning a nod of approval from Harper. I'll need to speak with Mr. Reynolds privately, Patricia said after introductions. Samantha will show you to our playroom. It has books, games, even a small climbing wall. After the children left with the assistant, Patricia's demeanor shifted to crisp professionalism. You're navigating complicated waters, Mr. Reynolds. You have no biological relation to these children. Their father has resurfaced seeking custody, and you've been housing them without proper legal authorization. Wesley leaned forward. I've provided them stability, security, and love, everything they lacked. Their father abandoned them. Their mother died without resources. They were literally homeless when I found them. Patricia nodded. All valid points. But family court prioritizes biological connections unless there's significant evidence of unfitness. The father has a history of domestic violence and alcohol abuse, Wesley countered. Alleged incidents without convictions, Patricia said evenly. And according to the children's statements, he never abused them directly. Wesley ran a hand through his hair in frustration. What are our options? We petition for temporary guardianship while investigating the father's circumstances. We emphasize the stability you provide, the children's attachment to you, and your connection through your late wife. And if the father contests? Patricia's expression was grave. Then we're looking at a custody battle, one that frankly would be difficult for you to win under conventional circumstances. Wesley's jaw tightened. I'm not giving up on them. I wouldn't expect you to, Patricia replied. But we need to be strategic. How much do you know about Benjamin Lewis? Only what my investigator has uncovered. Construction worker, alcoholic, abandoned the family 3 years ago. Patricia made notes. We'll need more. Has he attempted contact since re-emerging? Not directly. He's working through the system. That suggests he's cleaning up his act. Legal channels rather than confrontation. She tapped her pen thoughtfully. What about your connection to the children through your wife? That could be significant. Wesley hesitated, then shared what Diana had discovered. The estranged twin sisters, the locket, Catherine's presence at his wedding. Patricia listened intently. This connection to your wife strengthens your position, but we need to understand why the sisters were estranged. Those letters Diana found could be crucial. After the meeting, Wesley found Harper and Ethan in the playroom, both engaged in building an elaborate block structure. Look, it's a castle, Ethan exclaimed. You can. Live here with us. Wesley smiled, kneeling to examine their creation. It's magnificent. Are those towers? Harper nodded, adding another block carefully. Castles need strong walls to keep everyone safe inside. The simple statement carried obvious meaning. Wesley placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. I'm doing everything I can to keep us all safe together, Harper. Her eyes met his, searching for truth. Ms. Wells will help? She's very good at her job, Wesley assured her. Now, shall we get lunch before we head home? As they walked to the elevator, Wesley's phone rang. Diana again. Mr. Reynolds, Benjamin Lewis just arrived at your suburban house. Your housekeeper called me when he started demanding to see the children. Wesley's blood ran cold. Are the police involved? Not yet. Martha convinced him to wait in the garden. She said he appears sober and is calm, just insistent. Wesley ended the call and looked down at Harper and Ethan, blissfully unaware that their father had reappeared. Change of plans, he said with forced lightness. We need to make a quick stop before lunch. As the car turned toward the mansion, Wesley steeled himself for a confrontation he'd been both dreading and anticipating. He had no legal right to keep Benjamin from his children, yet everything in him rebelled at the thought of surrendering Harper and Ethan to the man who had abandoned them. What he couldn't have anticipated was the shock of recognition that would come when he finally faced Benjamin Lewis, a face that had haunted Elizabeth's nightmares during their marriage, a face Wesley himself had seen before, in circumstances he had long forgotten. The past was about to collide with the present, with the children caught in the middle. Martha was waiting anxiously at the front door when Wesley's car pulled into the driveway. Her normally composed demeanor was visibly shaken. He's still here, she whispered as Wesley approached, the children trailing behind him. In the gazebo, I offered him tea to keep him calm. Wesley nodded appreciatively. Take Harper and Ethan to the kitchen for lunch, please. Don't mention who's here. Is something wrong? Harper asked, her perceptive eyes narrowing with suspicion. Wesley knelt to her level. Someone wants to talk with me. It's grown-up business. I need you to go with Martha while I handle it. Harper glanced toward the garden, then back at Wesley. A shadow of understanding crossed her face, but she didn't protest, taking Ethan's hand and following Martha inside. Wesley took a deep breath and strode toward the gazebo, his mind racing with legal strategies and protective instincts. As he approached, a man stood up from the bench, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and a weathered face that spoke of physical labor and hard living. Benjamin Lewis? The man nodded, his posture tense but controlled. "You must be Reynolds. Your housekeeper said you have my kids." The direct statement caught Wesley off guard. "Harper and Ethan are staying with me, yes. They were homeless after Catherine died." Benjamin's jaw tightened. "I've been looking for them for weeks. Found out about Kat too late." 3 years, Wesley said, his voice hardening. "You left them 3 years ago." "I'm not proud of it," Benjamin acknowledged, surprising Wesley with his candor. "I was drunk most of the time. Kat finally kicked me out, said not to come back until I was sober." "And now suddenly you're father of the year?" Benjamin's eyes flashed. "I've been sober 16 months. Working steady, got an apartment with a room for the kids. I didn't know Kat was sick. She changed her number, moved. By the time I tracked down her sister—" "Elizabeth," Wesley interjected, watching Benjamin's reaction carefully. Something shifted in the man's expression. "Yeah, Elizabeth found out she died too." He studied Wesley more closely. "You're her husband." "Widower," Wesley corrected, "which makes Harper and Ethan my family too." Benjamin gave a humorless laugh. "That's rich. You probably didn't even know Kat existed until a few weeks ago." The accusation stung because it was true. Wesley changed tactics. "Why don't we sit down? This situation is complicated for everyone." Reluctantly, Benjamin sat opposite Wesley in the gazebo. Up close, Wesley could see the man was in his late 30s with the same dark eyes as Ethan, and lines of hardship etched around his mouth. "I want to see my kids," Benjamin stated firmly. "They've been through trauma," Wesley countered. "Harper is extremely protective of Ethan. Unexpected appearances could be unsettling." "They're my children," Benjamin emphasized, leaning forward. "I have rights." "Rights you forfeited when you walked away," Wesley shot back, then composed himself. "Look, I'm not saying you can't see them. I'm saying we need to approach this carefully for their sake." Benjamin studied Wesley's face. "You care about them." "More than I thought possible," Wesley admitted. "They're extraordinary children." A flicker of pride crossed Benjamin's face. "Harper's smart as a whip. Always was, even as a baby." "She's brilliant," Wesley agreed. "And fiercely devoted to Ethan." The tension between them eased slightly as they found common ground and admiration for the children. Benjamin spoke haltingly about his struggle with alcoholism, his rehabilitation, his determination to make amends. "I know I can't just walk back in like nothing happened," he said finally. "But they're all I have left of Kat." The raw grief in his voice resonated with Wesley's own experience of loss. Despite his reservations, he found himself sympathizing with this flawed man trying to reclaim his family. "There's something I need to ask you," Wesley said after a pause. "Something about Elizabeth and Catherine." Benjamin's expression closed slightly. "What about them? I never knew Elizabeth had a sister until I met Harper and Ethan. Why were they estranged?" Benjamin looked away, tension returning to his shoulders. "Not my story to tell." "It affects the children," Wesley pressed. "I need to understand." Benjamin stood abruptly. "Ask your wife." "Oh wait, you can't. Neither can I. Dead women tell no tales." The bitter words hung in the air between them. Wesley was about to respond when movement near the house caught his attention. Harper stood on the patio, watching them intently. She had seen her father. For a moment, no one moved. Then Harper walked deliberately toward the gazebo, her small face set, in an expression of wary determination. "Harper," Wesley began, but she held up her hand in a gesture so adult it momentarily silenced him. She stopped several feet from Benjamin, studying him with intense scrutiny. "You look different," she said finally. Benjamin swallowed visibly. "I got better, Harper. I stopped drinking." She tilted her head. "Are you here to take us away?" The directness of her question created a painful silence. Benjamin looked from his daughter to Wesley, conflict evident in his face. "I came to find you," he said carefully. "I've missed you and Ethan." Harper's expression remained guarded. have a home now. With Wesley, the simple declaration sent a wave of emotion through Wesley. Benjamin's face tightened, but to his credit, he didn't lash out. "I see that," he said quietly. "You look good, Harper. Healthy." An unexpected voice broke the tension. "Daddy?" Ethan stood at the edge of the garden, Martha hovering anxiously behind him. The boy's face reflected confusion, then dawning recognition. Before either man could react, Ethan ran forward and threw himself at his father. Benjamin knelt to catch him, his composure finally breaking as he held his son. Wesley watched Harper's face, seeing the conflict there, her protective instincts warring with her own buried longing for her father. The family dynamics had just become infinitely more complicated. Whatever happened next would shape all their lives irrevocably. Wesley met Benjamin's eyes over Ethan's head, seeing his own determination mirrored there. Neither man was willing to let these children go. Somehow they would have to find a solution. That didn't tear Harper and Ethan apart all over again. The next morning found Wesley in his home office, sleepless and anxious, reviewing documents Patricia had sent over. Benjamin's surprise appearance had upended everything. After an emotional reunion with the children, they'd agreed he would return today for a supervised visit, an uneasy truce while they figured out next steps. A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Martha entered with coffee and a concerned expression. "Harper's been sitting on the window seat since dawn," she reported. Just watching the driveway, she barely touched her breakfast. Wesley sighed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "How's Ethan?" "Excited. Keeps asking when his daddy is coming back." The contrasting reactions spoke volumes. Ethan, too young to fully comprehend abandonment, embraced his father's return wholeheartedly. Harper, who had shouldered responsibility beyond her years, remained wary. "I'll talk to her," Wesley said, taking the coffee gratefully. He found Harper exactly as Martha described, perched on the window seat overlooking the circular driveway, still in her pajamas with a well-worn stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest. "That's a special friend you have there," Wesley said, sitting beside her. Harper nodded without looking away from the window. "His name is Thumper. Mom gave him to me when I was little." Wesley waited, giving her space to continue if she wished. "Dad doesn't really want us," she said finally, her voice small but matter-of-fact. "Why do you think that?" She shrugged one shoulder. "He left before. He'll leave again." Wesley chose his words carefully. "People sometimes make mistakes, Harper. Big ones. Your dad seems to be trying to fix his." "You don't want him to take us," she observed, turning those perceptive eyes on Wesley. The directness of her statement caught him off guard. I want what's best for you and Ethan. What if we don't know what's best?" Such an adult question from such a young child. Wesley gently took her hand. "Then we figure it out together. All of us." Before Harper could respond, a car appeared at the gate. Benjamin had arrived. The morning unfolded in a strange dance of awkward politeness. Benjamin brought gifts, a science kit for Harper, a toy fire truck for Ethan, and made visible efforts to engage both children. Ethan responded enthusiastically, showing his father around the house with running commentary. Harper participated, more cautiously, watching every interaction between Benjamin and her brother. Wesley observed from a distance, giving them space while remaining present. The painful truth was that he could see glimpses of a genuine father in Benjamin, imperfect, damaged, but trying. It complicated the narrative Wesley had constructed, where he alone could provide what the children needed. After lunch, Benjamin found Wesley in the kitchen. "Nice place you've got," he said, the words awkward but seemingly sincere. "Kids seem settled." "They've adapted remarkably," Wesley replied. "Considering everything they've been through." Benjamin nodded, fidgeting, with his coffee cup. "Look, I know you've got lawyers and money and everything. If you're thinking I'm here to extort you—" "That's not what I think," Wesley interrupted. "I believe you want to reconnect with your children. The question is what happens next." "I want custody," Benjamin stated plainly. "They're my flesh and blood." "But," He hesitated. I'm not stupid. Bouncing them from a mansion to my two-bedroom apartment. That's not good for them either. Wesley studied the man, surprised by his self-awareness. We should sit down with the attorneys, Wesley suggested. Find an arrangement that prioritizes Harper and Ethan's stability. Benjamin looked relieved at the reasonable response. Then, his expression shifted to something more hesitant. There's something else you should know, he said. About Elizabeth and Catherine. Wesley's attention sharpened. What about them? I knew both of them. Before either was married. Benjamin's voice was tight with old emotions. I worked as a landscaper for the Brooks family estate during college. The twins were home for summer break. We were all around 20. Wesley's mind raced with implications. You were involved with Catherine? Benjamin's laugh held no humor. Eventually. But Elizabeth first. We dated that whole summer. Then she went back east to school, said a poor gardener didn't fit her future plans. The revelation hit Wesley like a physical blow. Elizabeth had never mentioned this relationship. Catherine stayed local for college. Benjamin continued. We reconnected. She was. Softer than Elizabeth, kinder. But the restraining order, Wesley said. Elizabeth filed one against you. Benjamin's face darkened. 7 years ago. I was in a bad place then, drinking heavily. Catherine and I were having problems. I went to find Elizabeth, thought maybe she could help mend things with her sister. His hands clenched. She slammed. The door in my face said she had no sister. I lost it, started pounding on the door, yelling. The timeline aligned with Wesley and Elizabeth's separation. Had this confrontation triggered it? Why were they estranged? Wesley pressed. Benjamin met his eyes directly. Because of me. Elizabeth couldn't forgive Catherine for being with me after she was. Called it a betrayal. Cut her sister off completely. Even when Catherine reached out years later when she was pregnant with Harper. Nothing. The cruelty of it didn't align with the Elizabeth Wesley had known and loved. Yet he recalled her capacity for cold dismissal when she felt wronged. Why are you telling me this now? Because those kids deserve better than the mess we adults made. Benjamin said simply. Better than the twins' stubborn pride. Better than my failures. Maybe even better than choosing between your money and my blood. A small sound at the doorway interrupted them. Harper stood there, her face pale. How much had she heard? Were you talking about Mom? She asked quietly. Benjamin and Wesley exchanged alarmed glances. Come here, sweetheart, Benjamin said, extending his hand. To both men's surprise, Harper moved toward Wesley instead, leaning against him in a rare display of physical affection. Your mom was a wonderful person, Wesley said, putting his arm around her small shoulders. Both she and my wife Elizabeth were special, in different ways. Harper looked between the two men, her young face solemn. Are you fighting over us? No, honey, Benjamin said quickly. We're trying to figure out how to make things work best for you and Ethan. We both care about you, Wesley added. Harper considered this, then delivered her verdict with childlike clarity. Then you should both be our dads. The simple solution, born of a child's logic, left both men momentarily speechless. But in the profound silence that followed, a new possibility began to take shape, one neither had considered before. 3 months after Benjamin's reappearance, the oak-paneled family courtroom was silent as Judge Harriet Winters reviewed the unusual petition before her. This is an unconventional arrangement, she finally said, looking up at the two men standing side by side, Wesley, in his perfectly tailored suit, and Benjamin, in his best button-down and tie, presented a stark contrast visually, but their expressions held the same determination. Your Honor, Patricia Wells began, while unconventional, this shared custody arrangement best serves the children's needs. Mr. Reynolds provides educational opportunities and financial stability, while Mr. Lewis offers biological connection and has demonstrated his commitment to sobriety and fatherhood. Harper and Ethan sat behind them, Harper's face solemn, Ethan swinging his legs nervously. The children would primarily reside at Mr. Reynolds' residence with regular overnight visits with their father, who lives 20 minutes away, Patricia continued. Both men have agreed to co-parenting counseling. Judge Winters studied them thoughtfully. I've reviewed the home studies, the psychological evaluations, and the children's statements. What began as potential adversaries has become something else entirely. She directed her attention to Harper. Young lady, how do you feel about this arrangement? Harper stood, her voice small but clear. I want us to be a family, all of us. The judge nodded, then signed the order. Petition granted. Outside the courthouse, Benjamin extended his hand to Wesley. Never thought we'd end up here. Wesley shook it firmly. Neither did I. But here we are. Between them, Harper and Ethan beamed. Happy birthday, Harper. The garden of Wesley's mansion, now truly a home, was decorated with purple balloons and streamers, Harper's favorite color. The newly turned 7-year-old smiled shyly at the small gathering. Wesley, Benjamin, Martha, and several school friends she'd made over the past 6 months. Ethan danced around excitedly, barely containing himself until Harper blew out her candles. Make a wish, make a wish. As Harper closed her eyes, Wesley and Benjamin exchanged glances over her head, a look of mutual respect and understanding that had grown between them. What had begun as bitter rivalry had evolved into an unlikely partnership, bound by their shared love for these children. Later, after the party wound down, Harper approached Wesley with unusual seriousness. I had a dream last night, she said. About Mom and Elizabeth. They were together, smiling. Wesley knelt to her level. That sounds like a nice dream. They looked happy, Harper continued. Elizabeth said to tell you she's sorry she kept secrets, and Mom said she forgives her sister now. Wesley's breath caught. Harper, do you think they can see us? She asked. Mom and Elizabeth? Benjamin joined them, placing a gentle hand on his daughter's shoulder. I think, Wesley said carefully, that they would be very proud of you and Ethan, and happy to see all of us together. Harper nodded, satisfied with this answer, then ran off to join her brother. Benjamin wiped away an unexpected tear. Those twins were always too stubborn for their own good. Wesley nodded, watching the children play. Their daughters helped heal what they couldn't. In the golden afternoon light, surrounded by the laughter of children, both men silently acknowledged what they'd discovered. Family isn't always what you're born into or what you plan for. Sometimes it's what finds you when you need it most. And sometimes the greatest gifts come in the form of 2 small children, who teach grown men how to forgive, how to heal, and how to build something new from the broken pieces of the past.